The iron gates of the Bellarose estate creaked open as I pulled into the circular drive. Spanish moss draped like old lace from the oak trees, swaying lazily in the Georgia breeze. Everything looked perfect, almost surgically so. White hydrangeas in antique urns, golden place cards tucked neatly in trays held by uniformed staff, the scent of lemon-polished wood and roses that had no business blooming this late in the season. It was Cassie's wedding day, and once again, I was a supporting actress in someone else's play. I stepped out of the car, heels clicking on stone, heart doing something more like twitching than beating. 1 hour before the ceremony, and already I felt like an intruder. Not a single member of my husband's family had greeted me, though I'd RSVP'd months in advance. But then again, being on the list didn't mean you belonged. The entry doors stood wide, flanked by twin floral arches that looked straight out of a bridal magazine. I took a deep breath and walked inside. The main ballroom was a cathedral of excess, vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a piano trio playing some string-heavy arrangement of Beyoncé. I scanned the room, looking for the photo wall Cassie insisted on featuring for family legacy moments. There it was, an enormous triptych of the Hart family's greatest hits. Cassie's graduation, Louise's promotion, their parents' anniversary in Charleston. Then I saw it. A photo from our lake house weekend last summer. I remembered that trip. I'd planned every detail. Rented the cabin, bought the groceries, even paid the deposit when Cassie forgot her wallet. And yet, there I wasn't. My body had been neatly cropped from the group shot. The edge of my elbow still visible, if you looked hard enough. But no face, no smile, no place. "I thought you didn't go on that trip," someone murmured beside me. It was one of Cassie's college friends, sipping mimosa, her voice too casual for the punch it landed. "I was there," I said simply, not trusting myself to say more. She nodded, uninterested. Oh. The word hit harder than it should have. I walked away, smiling for no one, not even myself. If being invisible was a game, I'd just been crowned champion. The rest of the room buzzed with small talk, lipstick checks, and unspoken hierarchy. I drifted from table to table, offering polite hellos. Most smiled vaguely, then turned back to their conversations. A few mistook me for a cousin from New Jersey. One older woman leaned in and asked, "Are you one of the groom's co-workers?" I gave her a tight smile. "No, I'm Louise's wife." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't realize. You're very quiet." Quiet, the adjective people use when they mean forgettable. Or in the Hart family, replaceable. Over by the champagne tower, I caught the tail end of someone saying, "Cassie really built this all on her own. No shortcuts, just hustle." I nearly choked. I'd introduced her to her current employer, edited her first pitch deck. Hell, I designed her business logo. But why ruin the fairy tale with facts? I wasn't mad. I was still. A stillness that comes right before something breaks. At the welcome table, I looked for my name. The seating chart was calligraphed onto a huge mirror in gold ink. I scanned the H's. Nothing. I scanned again. Then I saw it. Not Pearl Hart. No. Lillian Hart, logistics staff. Next to the name, a small white tag waited in a tray. Support crew, Lillian. A staffer picked it up, smiled, and said, "This must be yours, miss." I blinked. "That's not my name." "Oh, sorry," he mumbled, glancing at the chart. "It says logistics. Were you helping with setup?" "No," I said slowly, calmly. I wasn't. The woman behind me whispered to her husband, "Do you think she's catering? Should we ask her about the gluten-free cake?" I placed the name tag back in the tray without another word and turned away. My palms were cold. My throat had that familiar tightness, the one that doesn't mean crying, but control. Too much control. Not rage, not sadness. Just clarity. That's not my name. That's not my role. I stepped outside. The sun was starting to lower, casting long shadows across the lawn where chairs had been set for the ceremony. I found a quiet corner by the rose trellis and inhaled deeply. No tears. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the cost of crying here was too high. They'd win if I cracked. They'd say I was being dramatic, oversensitive, overreacting, again. I remembered something my grandmother used to say when family got cruel. Some families don't throw you out, they just stop letting you in. I wasn't thrown out. I was edited out. The last few months played back like flickers on a broken film reel. The dinner I wasn't invited to, the group chat I was accidentally removed from, the silence from Louise when I mentioned how distant everyone felt. At some point, neglect stops being passive. It becomes a choice. I could have left, called a car, checked into the Ritz and spent the evening watching bad TV in a plush robe, but I didn't. Because I needed to see it through. Not for closure, not for peace, but for the truth. How far would they go? Would they dare? "Pearl," a voice said behind me. I turned. A young woman in a headset smiled awkwardly. "Cassie wants to see you backstage, says you might have forgotten something." Forgotten? I looked her square in the eye, smiled like steel wrapped in silk. "No," I said, "but let's go see what she thinks I did." I followed the assistant through a narrow corridor that snaked behind the ballroom, her headset crackling as she walked too quickly ahead of me. She barely looked back, offering no small talk, not even a hint of what Cassie wanted. I didn't ask. I already knew the rhythm. When they smiled too much, they wanted something. When they said nothing at all, they'd already decided what you were there for. The air backstage smelled of curling iron heat and too much perfume. I passed racks of dresses, half-open makeup kits, the mess of preparation that didn't match the perfection on the other side of the wall. It was theater, always had been. Cassie wasn't getting married, she was putting on a show, and I was the unwelcome extra in a scene that didn't have a line for me. The assistant stopped outside the dressing room. She gave me a quick nod, then vanished like smoke. I opened the door. Cassie stood in front of the mirror, her reflection magnified by the row of lights framing the vanity. Her hair was pinned in cascading curls, makeup flawless, gown spread across a velvet bench behind her like a silken flood. A few bridesmaids milled around, sipping iced coffees and fake laughing like they were auditioning for a reality show. Cassie didn't turn around. "Train's slipping," she said. "Can you fix it?" I hesitated. My fingers itched with instinct. To help. To make things easier. Old habits die hard, especially when you've spent years being the fixer. I walked over, gently picked up the edge of the gown to adjust it. The fabric was delicate, but I'd done this before. More times than she'd ever thank me for. Before I could lay it back down, her hand shot out. Slap. It wasn't a strike, not really. More like a swat. Sharp, measured, deliberate. "Don't touch it," she snapped. "You'll stretch it or stain it." The room fell into a freeze. One bridesmaid choked on her drink. Another awkwardly checked her phone. I didn't move. My fingers hovered in the air where the fabric had been. Cassie turned back to the mirror, cool as a stone in winter. "You can leave that door open on your way out." She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. I placed the train down as gently as I'd picked it up, adjusted nothing, and walked away. It wasn't about the dress. It never was. It was about making sure everyone knew their place, especially me. Her bridesmaids wouldn't say a word. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered loud and clear. I wasn't family. I was help, and help didn't get to breathe too close to silk. The hallway back felt narrower than before. My breath tightened, not from shame, but from something colder. Recognition. This wasn't new. It was just louder now. I remembered Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Cassie had forgotten to order the pie, blamed me in front of the entire family. I'd laughed it off, took the drive at 9 at night to find a bakery still open, or the time she told her friends at brunch that I was Louise's +1, as if our 10-year marriage was a technicality, and I'd let it happen. I kept telling myself, keep the peace, don't make it awkward, be the bigger person. But being bigger just made it easier for them to step on me. Maya Angelou's words circled in my mind like a slow drum. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I reached the main floor again, passing by a table stacked with printed wedding programs and the event schedule. I scanned it. Blessing remarks, Pearl Hart, used to be on there, gone. In its place, Madison Clark and Jenna Reeves, Cassie's sorority sisters. I recognized the names. They once drunkenly asked me if I was Cassie's mother. I pulled out my phone, opened the email I'd sent Cassie weeks ago confirming my speech slot. No response. Fine. I walked over to the AV booth tucked in a corner near the DJ table. The tech guy looked half bored, half buried in wires. "Hi," I said calmly. "I submitted a USB with a short speech video for the blessing segment. Just wanted to make sure it's loaded." He looked confused. "Name?" "Pearl Hart." He clicked a few times, brows pulling together. "I don't see anything under that name. Did you give it to someone else?" "I handed it to Cassie last week. She said she'd forward it." He shrugged. "We were told to delete anything that wasn't on the final list. Only got 2 videos from the bride's side." I opened my purse and pulled out my backup USB. I knew better than to trust a single copy. "Can I load it now?" He looked hesitant. "I'd need clearance. The bride's been specific." From behind me, Cassie's voice rang out like a song played too sharp. "We just needed a tighter runtime. Nothing personal." I turned slowly. She smiled. Not sweetly, not even politely. Just enough to twist the knife. "Oh," I said, matching her tone. "Of course." I clenched the USB in my hand, not tightly, carefully, like it was the last fragile piece of proof that I had ever been meant to matter today. No screaming, no tears, just erasure. And erasure is colder than rage. I walked back toward the lobby, ignoring the looks from a few guests who noticed me re-entering empty-handed. I passed the photo wall again. My almost elbow still cropped out. I sat on a cushioned bench, took out my phone, and opened the speech file I'd recorded at home. The last line scrolled by slowly. "Family isn't always who claps for you. It's who notices when you're missing." I whispered it aloud. Not for anyone else, just for me. My fingers hovered over the delete button. I didn't press it, not yet. I put the phone away and folded my hands in my lap. Let's see what happens next. A voice cut through the hum of conversation nearby. "You're needed on stage. Now." I looked up. A young man in a headset pointed to the screen above the ballroom doors. My name flashed in white against a pink backdrop. Cassie hadn't given me a speech. She'd given me a stage, but not for the reason she thought. The garden lounge was quiet, like the part of a theater just off stage where you could still hear the performance but didn't have to play a role. I stepped onto the flagstone path, heels softer now against moss-covered stone, phone buzzing in my hand. "Signed and countersigned," the message read. Then another. "Funds will post within the hour. Congrats, Pearl." I didn't smile. The deal had closed. $17 million, years of meetings, drafts, and waiting rooms, all for this contract. And yet, I stood in borrowed air, watching the facade of celebration echo inside that ornate ballroom. My feet carried me farther from the laughter, the clinking glasses, the artificial toasts. Out here, the scent of roses tried to compete with the distant hum of speakers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built a career on knowing timing, on knowing when to speak, and when to let the silence reveal more than words ever could. Inside, they saw what they wanted to see. The elegant sister-in-law who smiled too politely, who never interrupted, who made space without ever taking it. But out here, alone, I could be honest with myself. A small group of women giggled near the corner, dressed in designer satin. I overheard one say, "Cassie really pulled this off, all by herself. That girl came from nothing. Look at her now." Another chimed in, "No handouts, just grit." My fingers twitched at the phrase. Handouts? No. She didn't need handouts. She needed a bailout. Flashback, 3 months earlier. Cassie in my kitchen, voice shaky, fingers tapping against a wine glass. "I'm short for the deposit," she'd said. "Only temporarily. I promise I'll pay you back." I'd written the check. Quietly. No interest. No signature needed. She'd looked me in the eye and said, "You saved this wedding. I won't forget it." But she had. Or maybe she chose to. I wasn't listed on the sponsor sheet. My contribution wasn't mentioned in the program. And now, her friends spun fairy tales of self-made success, while I sat in the wings like some discarded costume designer who wasn't glamorous enough to be thanked on stage. Funny, I muttered under my breath, how some people remember their struggles and forget their lifelines. I turned, walking slowly toward the marble bench beneath the oak tree. As I sat, the weight of my silence stretched wider than any check I'd written. A voice startled me. "Excuse me, Aren't you the woman who introduced Cassie to the MedTech CEO? I looked up. A man in a pale blue blazer, holding a glass of bourbon. I blinked. Yes, at a business mixer 4 years ago. He smiled. She's done well for herself. Must have been a great connection. I didn't respond, just nodded. The truth? That connection was the reason she had a brand at all. It led to her first contract, her first partnership, her first illusion of independence. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through archived emails. There it was, Cassie's message. If you could just mention me to Dr. Felix, I promise I won't let you down. No thank you after the fact, no acknowledgement in interviews or press, just absence. Influence, I realized, becomes invisible when carried quietly. When you don't demand credit, people assume you never gave anything at all. I closed the email, sat back, and exhaled. The ballroom lights flickered in the distance, casting silhouettes of people who'd never once asked how I was doing. Inside, they danced, took selfies, clinked flutes. Out here, I sat in the reality they carefully pretended didn't exist. You don't air dirty laundry at a wedding, I remembered someone saying once. But what if the laundry wasn't yours to hide? What if it was being thrown in your face in front of 200 people? The urge to stand up, storm in, say it all, boiled just beneath my skin. But I didn't move, not yet, because they expected me to break. They wanted the scene. Instead, I gave them silence. The kind that made people look over their shoulders and wonder what you were thinking. A final buzz pulled me back to the moment. Bank notification. Funds received. Full transfer confirmed. I closed my phone. In that instant, something inside me settled. I didn't need them to notice me anymore. I didn't need their claps. I needed my space. I stood slowly, brushing dust off my dress. The designer tag Cassie insisted I wear for branding purposes scratched at my neck. I tore it off, folded it once, and tucked it into my clutch. I walked back through the hallway that snaked around the reception area, passing framed portraits of strangers too rich to remember who catered their events. As I reached the side entrance to the ballroom, the stage lights were being adjusted. A planner ran by, clipboard in hand. My name wasn't on it. Didn't matter. I had something better. Myself. From the corner of the room, a technician whispered into his headset, then glanced at me. "You're next," he said. "You're on the screen." I frowned. For what? He just shrugged. "Cassie added you. I guess you're supposed to speak?" I followed his gaze. My name flashed in block letters across the projector screen above the stage. It wasn't framed in gold. It wasn't next to blessing remarks. It stood alone, bold, unexplained. But the tone? It wasn't warm. It wasn't a welcome. It sounded like the beginning of something else. My name echoed through the reception hall like a spotlight I didn't ask for. Heads turned. A few clapped hesitantly, unsure whether it was polite applause or confused reflex. I stood still for a breath too long, watching the projection screen with my name glowing in white block letters above the stage. No title, no context, just my name. I walked toward the stage, slow but deliberate, heels tapping a rhythm steadier than my pulse. The lighting had shifted since the cocktail hour, cooler now, with champagne flutes catching bits of lavender from the uplights. Everything about this moment felt staged, choreographed down to the silence that fell over the room as I climbed the stairs. A part of me thought, maybe this is it. Maybe I get to be heard finally. The microphone was already in place. I took it, cleared my throat, smiled. I'm honored to... The mic cut out. A soft buzz followed, then nothing. I tapped it once, twice. Nothing. I turned to the AV team at the back. One of them shrugged. Another leaned over to the board and, very deliberately, turned the volume knob all the way down. Gasps rippled across the room. A few guests laughed nervously. One groomsman whispered to his neighbor, "Guess they had tech problems last weekend too." I knew better. My voice hadn't cut out. It had been cut off. Across the room, Cassie stood by the head table, swirling her glass of Prosecco, her smile too wide, too smooth. I scanned the faces in the crowd. Most were confused. A few looked embarrassed for me, not for what had been done, but for the fact that I was the one it was done to. I stepped back from the mic, placed it gently on the stand, and left the stage with the same calm I had climbed it. Not rage, not tears, just calculation. Backstage, I didn't stop. I walked straight to the AV booth, where a young tech in a wrinkled blazer and earpiece blinked at me as if I'd come to order a drink. "I need to see the script you were given for my speech," I said, voice low but firm. He hesitated. I think it's in the folder marked Cassie Final Approvals." He handed it over. The printed page was thick stock, professionally formatted, titled Blessing Remarks, Pearl Heart. I skimmed the lines. Nothing was mine. Gone were the sentences I'd written about grace, family, and tenacity. Instead, the speech was filled with hollow phrases like, "Love conquers all," and "What a beautiful couple we have here today." The closing line, "Let's all raise our glasses to the bride who truly shines the brightest tonight," felt like a dagger dipped in cheap glitter. At the bottom, a forged signature, mine, slanted and digital. "This isn't my speech," I said. The tech paled. I was just told this was the approved version." "By who?" He glanced toward the floor. "Cassie's assistant." "Yesterday." I pulled out my phone, opened the original file I had backed up in 3 separate locations, and held it next to the fake one. "See the difference?" I asked. He nodded silently. I didn't need an apology. I needed acknowledgement. This wasn't a glitch. It was erasure, packaged, printed, and handed out like favors. In the mirror backstage, I caught a glimpse of myself. Lipstick still perfect, eyes a little darker than usual, but not from shadow. "You let them erase you one paragraph at a time," I said to my reflection. I thought of Nora Ephron. Above all, be the heroine of your life, not the victim. I began deleting every edited version of the speech off my devices, copies Cassie had sent for formatting help, requests to tweak the tone. I left only the raw original, mine. No edits, no permissions, no compromise. I stepped back into the hallway, walking slowly, breathing deeply. As I passed the floral arch, someone from the bridal party, a woman I'd met once at a spa day Cassie insisted on planning, looked up from her phone and smirked. "Don't take it personally," she said. "Cassie said you'd get emotional and forget your lines anyway." I stopped, turned to her. "That so?" She shrugged. "You looked nervous." "I wasn't nervous," I said. I was silenced. Her expression faltered. "It's just wedding stress, you know?" "No," I said clearly. "This isn't stress. This is strategy." I walked on, pulse steady. People were whispering now. A few eyes followed me, not with pity, but curiosity. They were finally noticing. I found Louise near the open bar, sipping scotch, avoiding everything. I met his eyes. He didn't come toward me, didn't nod, didn't move, just stood there, watching like a man who didn't know whose side he was on, and was too weak to choose. They've silenced me so long they forgot I can still speak with action. I turned away from him without hesitation. The wedding planner walked by in a rush, clipboard pressed to her chest. I caught her elbow gently. "Who's the billing contact for the venue?" I asked. She blinked. I think that would be whoever made the deposit." "That would be me." "Oh. I'd like to speak with the venue manager." A pause. "Right away," she said, voice tight. I didn't follow her immediately. I looked back at the stage, my name still flickering faintly on the screen, like a ghost someone tried to exorcise too late. The microphone was still dead. But I wasn't. I'd never been clearer. The hallway near the kitchen smelled like warm bread, and something sharper, maybe resentment. I stood just past the swinging service doors, waiting while the venue manager typed something into his iPad with all the enthusiasm of a man who wished he were elsewhere. "I need a copy of the invoice," I said, voice steady. He glanced up, a bit confused. "I'm sorry. Are you with the bride's team?" "No," I said. "I'm the one who paid for the venue." That pulled his attention. "Oh, name on the account?" "Pearl Heart." He typed faster, then looked back down at the screen. "Right. Yes. Deposit from Heart Strategic Holdings. That's yours?" "Yes." He blinked, lips parting slightly. Would you like a printed version? I would, and a digital copy sent to this address. I handed him my business card. Of course. He nodded quickly and turned toward the small office down the hall. I didn't say anything else, no explanation, no smirk. I didn't need to. That was the thing about proof. It spoke louder than anger ever could. Receipts don't lie. People do. As I walked back toward the reception hall, my path intersected with the powder room hallway. Cassie's laugh floated around the corner before I saw her. Louise stood beside her, arms crossed, nodding as their cousin Margot raved about the floral arrangements. The moment his eyes met mine, he straightened. "Pearl," he said quickly, excusing himself from the group. He met me halfway down the corridor. "What are you doing? You're making a scene." "A scene?" I repeated calmly. "You're not being subtle," he whispered. "It's Cassie's day. Don't escalate things." I tilted my head. "You do realize I paid for this a day, right?" His jaw clenched. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point." "Pearl," he said, low and almost pleading. "You're making this personal." It became personal the moment I was rewritten out of my own speech and labeled support crew. Behind him, Cassie turned, her eyes sharp with curiosity. She strolled closer, that signature smirk already in place. "Oh, come on," she said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "She just can't stand not being the center, always looking for a stage." I smiled at her, a cold curve of the mouth. "I wasn't trying to be in the center, but you made damn sure I wasn't allowed in the room." Louise shifted uncomfortably. "Can we not do this here?" "You already did it here," I said, brushing past them both. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Later, in the hallway behind the event kitchen, I sat on a bench with my phone in hand. The lighting was dim, the tiles cold beneath my heels. I opened the old message from Louise, one I'd saved, perhaps stupidly. "Whatever happens, I'll always stand by you, especially with Cassie." I stared at the words longer than necessary. Those types of vows, written quickly, meant casually, never feel hollow when you first receive them. They feel like scaffolding, something to lean on, until they're not there when you need them. He didn't protect me because I was quiet enough not to scream. That line looped in my mind like a courtroom closing argument. And in that moment, I finally understood. I had been loyal to a ghost. I stood, checked my phone for signal, and drafted a text to the venue manager. "Reassign all billing and sponsorship rights to me, in writing. Effective immediately. No frills, no emojis. Just the transfer of power. Signed in silence." I stepped onto the back balcony, letting the cool air hit my face. My heels clicked once against the wood before I slipped them off and stood barefoot for a moment, grounding myself. From somewhere in the garden, a band played something soft and generic. I didn't need a soundtrack. What I needed was to stop asking for permission to exist. Back inside, the lights had shifted. Guests had moved to their seats for dinner. Candles flickered on long tables, white linens perfect, too perfect. Someone clinked a glass, and the room dimmed further. Louise walked past me again. His face was pale now. Cassie was on stage, mic in hand, her white dress shimmering like deceit under spotlight. I didn't sit at my assigned table. I took a seat near the aisle, edge of the room, like always. Except this time, I wasn't hiding. I was watching. I adjusted the napkin on my lap. Cassie began her speech. "First of all," she said with theatrical breath, "thank you all for being here. This day would mean nothing without all of you." She looked around the room like a politician working a crowd. "There are people we thank?" She paused, letting it hang. "And people we tolerate." The words fell like pins. Some laughed. Some didn't know what to do. But me? I didn't blink. I just reached for my clutch and smiled. My name had just been weaponized a moment earlier, drawn into a toast that wasn't a toast at all. I sat in my now corrected seat, adjusted just far enough from the head table to remind me of where I stood in this carefully curated pecking order. The air had shifted. What was once a celebratory hum now felt like static beneath polished music. Someone clinked their glass. The signal. Formal toasts were beginning. A wedding planner gave me a nod from the far side of the room. Her eyes didn't hold warmth, just instruction. I stood, slow and reluctant, every step toward that stage feeling like the last few inches before you step off a cliff. The mic was already in place. I could feel every gaze tracking me across the floor, each stare laced with expectation or judgment, sometimes both. I still thought I could salvage the moment. That's on me. The champagne flute I reached for trembled slightly in my grasp, but I steadied it. My gaze found Cassie's. I took one step forward, lifted the glass, and began to raise it toward her. Then it happened. A single drop. Just one. It slid from the rim of my glass and kissed the edge of Cassie's gown, right near the hem, barely visible, but enough. Her reaction was instant. Not a laugh, not a shrug, a slap. Her hand cracked across my cheek so hard the sound popped through the mic. The room gasped as one. Forks froze midair, mouths hung open. A few guests turned instinctively, as if trying to pretend they hadn't seen it. Cassie didn't flinch. Her eyes burned through me like I'd just shattered her altar. "You've ruined everything, again!" she screamed into the mic. "Why can't you just stay in the background where you belong?" I didn't cry. I didn't step back. I just stood there, the sting on my face quickly drowned by the roar in my ears. There it was, the truth, loud and clear, through fingers and sound. I lowered the glass. Cassie wasn't done. Before I could leave the stage, she took a breath and kept talking. The mic hissed slightly as she leaned back in. "She always does this," she said, pacing now like a political candidate. "Makes it about herself. This day was supposed to be about love, not interruptions." I scanned the room. People weren't breathing. Some were mortified. Some were amused. And a few, God help me, were entertained. Louise remained frozen. He didn't interrupt, didn't step in, just stood a few feet behind her with his arms folded like this was a minor inconvenience, like maybe it would blow over. I made eye contact with him. Nothing. That blank face, those passive eyes, I could have been anyone in that moment. I turned slowly, all eyes followed. This was never about the champagne. It was about erasing me with applause. I walked down the steps, not rushed, not broken. I placed the untouched glass on the first table I passed, aligning it neatly with the dessert fork. Then I made my way to my seat, sat down, and reached for my phone with all the serenity of someone about to schedule a haircut. Voices buzzed around me. Did she just get slapped? Was that real? She probably did it on purpose. I smiled politely and unlocked my screen. You don't scream and fire, you open the exits. I opened my legal app and began typing. Initiate Clause 4B. Immediate withdrawal of sponsorship funds. Execute full reversal. Then I opened my financial documents folder and reviewed the active contracts attached to the venue. I didn't even look up when a server placed a napkin beside my plate. Gold-embroidered initials stared back at me. CH. I stared at the tiny stain from where the champagne had landed. A single smudge. Barely visible. Cassie's initials shimmered in the thread, like her name was branded on every moment of this night. I picked it up, folded it twice, and slipped it into my purse. That's the last drop of disrespect I'll ever collect from this family, I whispered to myself. The room didn't notice me anymore. Good, that's how I wanted it. I had spent years trying to be included. Now I was done. A guest across the table leaned in, eyes wide but calm. You handled that like a CEO, she said. What's your next move? I turned to her, smiled, because my next move wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be unforgettable. The air outside the tent had cooled, but my skin still burned. I needed a breath, space, anything that wasn't perfume or politics or the scent of shrimp cocktail from the buffet line. I stood near the catering prep area, gardenias blooming at my back, and tried to make sense of what had just unfolded. I'd sent the legal withdrawal, turned the last page of the performance they called a wedding. A bridesmaid in a dusty lavender dress passed me, phone in hand, whispering something I couldn't hear, but understood completely. They weren't done. They never were. From behind the tent curtain, someone murmured, "She should have just stayed quiet. It's her pattern to ruin things." That sentence clung to my ribs like thorns. I exhaled slowly, not to calm myself, but to steady the aim. I moved farther down the gravel path behind the reception tent, not looking for anyone, but finding someone anyway. Mary Jane, my mother-in-law. And beside her, a woman I vaguely recognized from the Women's Guild meetings, pearls, pastels, and pretension. She was never one of us, Mary Jane said, her voice low but firm. The other woman nodded with that trademark Southern politeness. I always thought Louise would end up with Rebecca's daughter. Now she knew how to blend in. I told him that too, Mary Jane added. You can't marry someone just because she's nice in public. Pearl's always been difficult. Quiet, but difficult. The other woman chuckled lightly. Well, at least she kept her mouth shut. Until now. I didn't confront them. I didn't even blink. I walked away. Each step heavier than the one before. Not because of grief, but because every word that clung to my skin confirmed what I already knew. They didn't want a daughter-in-law. They wanted another echo chamber. Years of holiday dinners, hand-delivered gifts, family calendars, medical appointments arranged for her out of pure convenience. None of it mattered. The moment I showed spine instead of silence, I became the problem they always hoped I'd stay hidden. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with 4 notifications at once. I tapped the first. A video. And not just any video. It was that video. Me on stage. The slap. Cassie's scream edited out. The camera zoomed in right as I recoiled, blinking in shock. A caption in bold white font floated over the frame. Overdramatic guest ruins sister-in-law's big moment. I opened the comments. She clearly planned that. Drama queen energy. If someone spilled on my wedding dress, I'd do worse. A few voices tried to defend me, but they were drowned out by hashtags, jokes, and reposts. It had begun. They hadn't just filmed my humiliation, they'd edited the truth out of it. I sat on a bench near the vendor exit, scrolling through the flood of notifications. A friend from Chicago texted, "Is this you? I can't believe it." A client wrote, "Let me know if you want help spinning this. It's brutal." I stared at the screen. Brutal? You think this is brutal? I'd lived through worse in silence. What made this worse was the applause. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. Instead, I opened my files. I uploaded the full, uncut version, the one a guest had quietly airdropped me minutes before. Then I opened my email. Subject line, exclusive, for context. Recipient, Kara Simmons, investigative journalist, friend, and one of the only people in media I trusted. I attached the video, then wrote, "This is what happened. Do with it what you think is right. I'm not hiding anymore." Next, I went to my professional Instagram account. I typed 6 words. Let the truth trend, #unmuted. I hit post and let it breathe. Back inside, Cassie was holding court like the pageant queen she'd always wanted to be. A cluster of influencer friends circled her like moths, posing for photos in front of the flower wall I'd personally paid to install. I walked past them. Didn't look down, didn't pause. But Cassie saw me. She stopped mid-laugh. Something in my body language must have changed. I didn't need to push back anymore. My presence had started doing it for me. Louise appeared near the bar. His face was paler now, the confident husband routine slipping. "Pearl," he said, stepping closer. "Can we talk?" I kept walking. "Pearl," he tried again. "You know this is going to get out of control." I turned to face him. "It's already out of control," I said. "You just liked it better when it was out of my hands." His mouth opened to respond. I walked away before he could. I didn't know him another second. I'm not starting a war, I thought. I'm ending their monopoly on the truth. I felt my phone buzz again. I looked down. A direct message from an account I didn't recognize immediately. Cassie's ex-boyfriend. The message preview read, "I think it's time you saw what she did to me too." I sat at the farthest table, alone, my water untouched. Across the ballroom, Cassie basked in her latest spotlight moment, laughing too loud, performing for phones, tossing glances over her shoulder like she was auditioning for the next Real Housewives franchise. The chandeliers above glittered, too perfect for what was coming. My phone buzzed once. Upload complete. I tapped the screen, watched the confession clip buffer for a breath, and then go live. A video she'd forgotten about, or maybe thought I'd deleted. The one she sent in desperation months ago, when she needed my name, my network, my access. I refreshed. Views. 432. Refreshed again. Views, 2013. Let's see how long this fantasy holds before reality arrives. The flashback burned through my mind like a brand. Cassie, hair tied up in a messy bun, no makeup, on a Zoom call with me, her voice frantic, small. You're the only reason I ever got medtechs. I'd be nothing without that intro, Pearl. Please, just connect me to Felix. I swear I'll handle it from there. She'd sworn, I'd delivered, and she'd forgotten. No, she'd erased me. Not anymore. I hadn't just posted the full video, I'd sent it directly to Kara Simmons, a journalist with more backbone than anyone in that ballroom. And then, I'd trimmed a 15-second teaser for social. Caption. She said I was never part of this. Funny, when she needed me, she made me her foundation. The phone started buzzing. First one table, then another. A man in a charcoal suit nudged the woman beside him. She raised an eyebrow and leaned in. More whispers, more screens lighting up like dominoes. Cassie's laughter faltered. She glanced around. A rep from the event sponsor walked up to my table, clipboard in hand. Did you just post a client tape? He asked, low. I didn't look at him. No, I said. I just uploaded the truth. He blinked and walked away. As Cassie walked toward the stage for her final thank you speech, the chandeliers blinked once, then again, and died. The room gasped. Darkness. Then the mic screeched and cut out. The music vanished mid-note. Muffled confusion spread as phones lit the room with camera flashes and Instagram stories in progress. Emergency red lighting hummed to life around the perimeter. Cassie froze mid-step, her voice drowned in technical silence. The venue manager strode up to her, bending close to whisper. Billing account was flagged. Funds froze. Per contract clause, all non-essential power has been pulled. Her face dropped like a curtain. I don't understand, she stammered. Your sponsor account, he said. It was withdrawn. Servers hesitated. Guests stood from their chairs, looking around like children suddenly left without a script. Cassie turned to the mic, tapped it. Nothing. Just a technical hiccup, she called out, her smile a twitch now. We'll be back shortly. Behind her, the screen behind the stage lit up with white text. Video removed by uploader, file retracted by owner rights. I had pulled it offline, not to hide, but to mark the moment. I didn't need to keep showing them who she was. They'd already seen enough. The room buzzed with chatter, questions, rumors. I didn't have to move. My presence was a message now. I sipped from my glass, fingers steady. I didn't have to shout. All I had to do was let them hear themselves. My phone buzzed again. A number I recognized, local news station. We're prepping the story, the producer said. Do you have a comment before we air? Yes, I said. Let the record be honest, no spin. I have nothing left to protect. Cassie's Instagram follower count started to drop before she could even reach the other side of the stage. Sponsors began posting disclaimers. We are currently evaluating our partnerships. Louise pushed his way through the crowd, his face twisted in panic. What the hell are you doing? He hissed. This wasn't the time or place. No? I tilted my head. But erasing my speech, slapping me in public, and turning the crowd on me was fine? His jaw clenched. You should have talked to me first. I did, I said. For years. Guests began quietly heading toward the exits. Servers held trays frozen mid-air. The wedding wasn't ending. It was collapsing. Real time, in front of everyone. A bridesmaid caught my arm as I moved toward the door. Her voice was low, almost awed. You didn't just pull the plug. You took the spotlight with you. The ballroom had lost its shine. Petals lay trampled across the dance floor. Half-filled wine glasses teetered on the edges of tables that once held hope and status. I walked slowly through the remains of a spectacle that had eaten itself alive. A few staff moved like shadows, sweeping confetti and shame into plastic bins. Guests had trickled out, quietly, quickly. Nobody said goodbye. Not to me. I stopped near the edge of the stage, now dimmed and abandoned. Hours ago, it was the pulpit where I'd been humiliated, but now, it was just furniture. My dress still looked perfect, untouched, impeccable, which was more than I could say for the reputations that were unraveling around me. No one clapped when I walked out, but they listened when I left. A man in a vendor vest approached cautiously, holding a clipboard. Ms. Hart? I turned. Yes? He smiled gently. Just wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't stepped in when the bride's family pulled out, we would have had to cancel the entire floral build-out. You kept us working. I blinked. They told you they'd pay? He chuckled. Only after you secured the venue and gave us the go-ahead. Look, I know we're just vendors, but we see things. We remember the real names on the checks. I nodded, jaw tight. They didn't just hide me, I muttered when he walked away. They trademarked my silence. I pulled up an old email from Cassie, her tone syrupy, strategic. If people know you're behind it, it kills my brand. Let me just take point on the public side of this, okay? I stared at the screen, every word a neon lie wrapped in sisterly tone. Then I forwarded the email to Kara, the same journalist who'd run the wedding collapse feature, attached with my signed contracts. Let them see what I'd funded. Let them know who really built the tower before Cassie lit the match. On my way out, I passed a couple near the coat check, still checking their phones. I heard she leaked it herself, the woman whispered. Well, she paid for half the wedding, the man replied. Wouldn't you be pissed? Outside, a valet whistled for my ride, but I waved him off. I needed to walk. As I reached the corner near the back patio, someone called out behind me. Excuse me? Could we get more napkins at table 4? I turned. A middle-aged guest stood there, squinting at me like I was supposed to apologize for not wearing a name tag. I don't work here, I said, but I did pay for the lights you ate dinner under. He turned red. Oh, I'm sorry. I smiled without warmth. Of course you are. Even when I shatter the glass, I thought, they still see the cleaner holding the broom. I stepped onto the patio, the night air thick with humidity and aftermath. I sat at an iron table beneath the glow of a paper lantern, unzipped my clutch, and pulled out my phone. On the screen, a Word document titled, My Statement, Not Their Story. I opened it, scrolled through. Each sentence was mine. Not rehearsed, not polite, just truth. Sharp, deliberate, uncompromised. A line from Aaron Hansen floated into my mind. What if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? I hadn't fallen. I'd flown through fire and walked out smelling like resolve. Another ping. A new headline. Wedding of Savannah influencer implodes in real time. Video hits 100K views. I didn't click it. Didn't need to. I knew what it said, because I'd said it first. Another ping. We are reevaluating our affiliations. A statement from one of Cassie's brand partners. Another. Louise. Just a single text. I need to explain. This isn't how I thought it would go. I didn't reply. I had nothing left to explain. My suitcase was already packed. My flight was in 5 hours. Everything worth carrying was already with me. I checked my phone again. 108,000 views. A little girl's voice broke the silence beside me. Are you the woman who saved the wedding? I looked down. She couldn't have been more than 7. She held out a folded napkin, embroidered with gold thread. I bent down, smiled, and whispered, No, honey, I'm the one who ended it. The morning after felt quiet. Not in the way sadness creeps in, but in the way storms leave you still. My hotel suite looked untouched, sterile even, except for the half-empty champagne flute by the window and the room service tray I never touched. I stood barefoot on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the golden haze stretch across Savannah's skyline. There was something surreal about watching a city wake up while yours had just burned down. A soft ping. I reached for my phone. Bride's wedding implodes over viral family scandal. The headline was real. I didn't flinch. I took another sip and smiled to no one. They always wanted me quiet. Now I'd given them something to talk about. I scrolled down. A short video autoplayed. My final line on stage. This dress, it's worth less than the ink on my deal today. The line took on a life of its own. Talk shows played it. Business podcasts dissected it. Influencers stitched it into reels. She's not just a woman scorned, one host said. She's a woman who knows her worth and her contracts. I didn't post that clip. Someone else had. But I didn't stop it either. DMs flooded in, from women I'd never met, strangers in Nevada, teachers in Maine, divorced mothers in Michigan. You spoke for all of us who stayed too long. One wrote, I watched that moment a dozen times. I left my marriage the next day. Some people called me petty, bitter, a villain. I didn't care. I hadn't done it for their applause. Respect isn't earned through silence. It's demanded through truth. Another ping. Sister-in-law's wedding wreck was years in the making. Articles piled up. Not just gossip columns, but real outlets. They wrote about my background, my company, my foundation. They uncovered what Cassie had never credited, that every step she took to success had a trail of my fingerprints. She didn't steal the show, one journalist wrote. She reclaimed it. Investor emails doubled overnight. A brand I'd been pitching for 6 months called me directly to talk partnerships. Another notification. The $17 million, woman who walked out with grace. I let that one sit on the screen a bit longer. A soft knock. Room service again. Good morning, Ms. Hart. Just confirming your car for the airport? I nodded. Yes, thank you. Cassie's world was unraveling fast. She lost 2 brand deals before noon. One of her sponsorships posted a statement. We take integrity seriously. We are reevaluating our affiliations. Her Instagram numbers dropped in real time. By afternoon, she'd uploaded a shaky apology video, eyes red, mascara streaked. Sometimes things get taken out of context, she said. The comments were brutal. One read, Context? Sis, she had receipts with timestamps. An email hit my inbox minutes later. Subject, thank you. It was from Cassie's former assistant. I worked under her for 2 years. What you did? It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Thank you for being louder than we could. Then came a voice note from Louise. His voice cracked before he even got to the point. I should have stood up when it mattered. You deserved more. I'm sorry I let you be the only one standing in a room full of cowards. I deleted it before it finished. I didn't need his regret. I needed his absence. At the airport, the world spun around me in a controlled blur. Travelers dragging carry-ons, flight announcements, espresso machines hissing. I sat by gate 12, my passport on my lap, watching people hustle toward gates, babies cry, phones buzz. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me here. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't written in since the week Louise forgot our anniversary. On the first blank page, I wrote, It was never about revenge. It was about freedom. When boarding was called, I stood, walked down the jet bridge, and didn't look back. First class, not because of ego, because I paid for it, because I earned it, because I'd stopped sitting in the back when I carried the whole flight. As the cabin door closed and the hum of the engine started to rise, I stared out the window. For the first time, I wasn't leaving something behind. I was stepping into what came next. I thought of all the women still trapped in rooms I used to sit in. And I made a promise. This won't end with me. Silence ends today. My phone buzzed one last time before takeoff. TED Talk inquiry. Would you consider speaking about reclaiming your story? Savannah's airport had never felt this still. I walked through the terminal with nothing but a leather carry-on and one blue folder zipped with clean edges. No souvenirs. No wedding favors, no parting gifts from family. Just freedom. Quiet and mine. Each step echoed under the polished floor. A mother wrangled a toddler near gate 7. A business traveler barked into his headset at gate 9. Normalcy. I moved through it like someone walking out of a fire and into the morning air. Sometimes peace doesn't whisper. Sometimes it sounds like jet engines roaring to life. As I reached the gate, I paused to glance at the window. Planes taxied under a soft sun breaking over the Georgia skyline. This time yesterday, I was being erased from a wedding speech. Today, I was walking into a life where my voice didn't need permission. No one came to say goodbye. Perfect. I boarded the plane without looking back. Private, clean, professional. No champagne, just stillness. I settled into my seat and watched Savannah shrink through the window as we took off. This city didn't break me, but it made sure I knew where not to return. My phone buzzed. A friend from college I hadn't heard from in years. Heard what happened. You okay? I typed one word back. Better. Louise hadn't called, not once. And honestly, I wasn't waiting for it. This wasn't a retreat. This was the punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd let someone else write for too long. The flight smoothed into altitude, and I opened my laptop. Not out of obligation, out of clarity. I pulled up photos from the wedding. Not the professional ones Cassie would post. The real ones. One had me half-cropped in the background near the mimosa bar. Another caught her grinning beneath an arch of flowers I'd paid for. I saved them, not as scars, but as proof. You can't crop out the woman who built the frame. My grandmother's voice came back to me then, soft, but sharp. Don't yell. Just move your feet. I started typing. Not a memoir, not revenge, just truth. The story I'd never let myself tell. By the time wheels hit the tarmac in Austin, I had 3 pages down. And I didn't stop. The air was warmer here, quieter, uninterested in who I'd been at the reception. The concierge at the boutique hotel greeted me with a kind smile. "Welcome back, Ms. Hart. Your room's ready." I thanked her. No one asked if I was someone's +1. No one assumed I needed to be introduced. I unpacked slowly. Blazer, laptop, a worn copy of a poetry book, and one folded napkin, embroidered in gold thread with the initials CH. I placed it in the desk drawer. I had carried closure in my pocket. Now I left it here. Later that afternoon, sunlight filtered through the wide windows of my suite. I brewed tea, no champagne, no fake speeches, just the sound of my own breath. Then an email pinged. Louise. "If you ever want to talk, I'm still here." I stared at it for a long while, typed, "Thank you." Erased it. Typed, "We both know too much was left unsaid." Erased that too. I finally wrote, "Thank you for the silence when I needed noise." And hit send. I didn't hate him. I just had no room left for him. No rage, no revenge, just absence. And in that, I finally understood the real weight of power. It's not always about being louder. Sometimes it's about who's not in the room. I picked up the phone and called my assistant. "Let's move the board meeting up," I said. "I'm ready." On the desk lay a clean notepad. I wrote across the top, "I didn't lose a family. I remembered myself." A flicker of my own reflection caught in the hotel TV screen. The anchor's voice was soft, trailing into a segment teaser. And coming up, a woman who redefined silence. I smiled. I didn't need a microphone. I became the message. I walked through the glass doors of the co-working space just as sunlight spilled across the polished floor. Heads turned, not with surprise, not with discomfort, but recognition. A few people nodded, quiet and respectful. My face blinked from the background monitors mounted on walls near the cafe and lounge areas. Redefining family, rewriting history. That was the segment title running beneath my photo. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was building. I adjusted the strap on my laptop bag and made my way upstairs to the private suite I rented on the top floor. My TED Talk dress rehearsal was in 30 minutes. I had notes to review, slides to tweak. But for once, there was no rush in my blood, no anxiety, just intention. They wrote me out, so I rewrote the whole damn ending. The first email waiting in my inbox was from a publisher. "We'd love to publish your memoir," it read. "The world needs more stories like yours." I stared at the screen, unblinking. And then I smiled. My mind drifted back to the wedding. How they deleted my speech, erased my name from the sponsor list. How they cropped me out of photos and treated my silence like a prop. Now my voice was being requested on every platform. News outlets, panels, podcasts. And that question from Bobby came back to me. "Are you the woman who saved the wedding?" I hadn't answered her then, but I knew now. No, I wasn't the one who saved the wedding. I was the one who ended the performance. I had created a mirror, one they could no longer hide behind. So no woman would get cropped out again without leaving fingerprints on the frame. Ping, a new voice message from Bobby. "Dee Dee, I told my teacher I want to be like you. She said that's powerful." I played it again, and then a third time. In my mind's eye, I saw her on the runway at the reception, running up to me after the power outage, wrapping her little arms around my leg and whispering, you're the only nice one here." That moment anchored everything. Not the headlines, not the applause, her voice, that hug. I opened the front-facing camera on my phone, hit record. "Hi, Bobby, it's Dee Dee. I'm so proud of you. I want you to grow up knowing something really important. Silence isn't always politeness. Sometimes it's just permission. And you, my love, never need permission to speak." I sent it, and sat back in the chair, tears not of sadness, but clarity. I didn't need to be applauded. I needed to be remembered by the right people. Later that evening, I stood on a rooftop stage in Austin, city skyline behind me, cameras in front of me. The panel was called Unmuted Women. The crowd was a mix of business leaders, activists, mothers, daughters. I held the mic, not like a weapon, but like a tool. "My silence used to keep the peace," I began. "Now it protects my power." I shared the story, not for sympathy, just the facts. Clean, sharp, no venom. "Family," I said, "is where your value is reflected, not extracted." They stood when I finished, but I didn't need the ovation, because I hadn't spoken to be heard. I had spoken so the next woman wouldn't be erased in real time while people watched. Back at my apartment that night, I opened the final box from Savannah. It was the only one I hadn't unpacked. Inside, the napkin from the wedding, gold thread embroidered with CH. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Next to it, I added a printed photo of Bobby from school, holding up a certificate that said leadership. Then I opened the draft of my book, typed the final line. They told me I ruined their picture, but I finally became the frame. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed this. A knock on the door. My assistant poked her head in, holding a sealed envelope. "You've been nominated for the Voice of the Year award. Want to go public?" I looked up. "Already am. They just needed time to catch up."